So I'm here to talk to you guys today about prepping. Now, we're in a room where probably, simply because of the area, and this is a Second Amendment group, that I'm going to be preaching to the choir. But you guys have discussions with people who are not pro-gun, who are not, they see no reason to prepare in your everyday life. And I want to kind of talk to you today about what prepping is and the three main roadblocks when I talk to people that kind of keep coming up, the same three things, reasons people always give me as to why they don't prep. So when I say prepping, when you hear prepping, anybody want to tell me what that brings to mind? What do you think of?
Boy Scouts.
Boy Scouts, always prepared.
Yeah.
But if you ask that question, if I ask that question out there in the mall, I'm not going to get anything about being prepared. I'm going to get people that think that prepping is what bat crap crazy people do, rednecks or whatever they want to call people, that it conjures up images thanks to shows like Doomsday Preppers of bunkers in the backyard, people stocking up 10 years worth of food and water and preparing for a zombie apocalypse. If you weren't sure, those shows are designed to make preppers look insane. They don't go out and get rational, intelligent people who can articulate why they prepare. They go out and get the craziest, most out there people they can find. One, because it gets ratings, and two, because you guys are in a Second Amendment group. You get the media at large and the government kind of work for the same, they have the same ideas, the same ideologies, and to our government, and I don't want to sound anti-government, but we have a government that, especially here in New York State, does not want you to be self-reliant at all. They want you to be completely and totally dependent on them for everything, because when you are, it's much easier to get you to do what they want when they want you to do it, because they're not going to come up, for people who are self-sufficient, it's harder for them to come to upstate and say, hey, we want you to give up your guns, because so many of us here are self-sufficient people who already prepare. But for people in New York City, it's simple. These are the same people that every time there's a snowstorm do the French toast frenzy where they're running out to get bread, milk, and eggs, because they apparently forgot that they live in the Northeast and there's snowstorms several times a year, and they forgot from 2 months ago when the last one hit that they need to get more than 1 day's worth of food in their house. So as soon as they hear there's going to be a storm, you got lines out the doors in the metropolitan areas. If you ask me, doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same result, but then continuing to do the same thing, that's what's crazy, not preparing.
Amen.
What we call prepping now was just everyday life a generation or two ago. I mean, the idea that you wouldn't have a few days worth of food, a few days worth of water at least, basic medical supplies in your house, you would have been laughed out of whatever community you were in back then. But today, as I already said, we have, as a society, we have people that are completely reliant on everything. They're going to be able to go to the store every day. They're going to be able to go to the store if they need something, go to a doctor if they need something. The idea that supply lines might get cut off, they don't believe it, because they don't want to believe it, because it would require them to change the way they live every day. So now I want to talk about the three things that kind of keep people from prepping. The first one is that it's shows like Doomsday Preppers that we already talked about. It's when you see anything on the news, when they pick up somebody who's got 10 guns and a couple thousand rounds of ammo. Anybody in here think 10 guns and a couple thousand rounds of ammo is some extreme thing that's worth reporting? No, but to metropolitan people in New York City, or the people at the Citizen, because they run that garbage all day long, that's the main crux of their story. It doesn't matter what goes on around. It doesn't matter if they picked the guy up for dealing drugs out of his home or molesting people, or that he had the guns illegally. The guns are the focus of their thing. Because to them, that's the problem. It's not all the other things going on around it. The problem is this guy had guns. Well, that's kind of how they are for anything, and they report this as if somebody like, any group that gets picked up or individual that gets picked up who is self-sufficient. There have been a lot of people that make videos like me on YouTube that get picked up and declared mentally unstable because the government doesn't like that they go out and talk about prepping to people. Because the more people that are asleep, the better it works for them. And they present those people the same way that networks present the people on doomsday preppers. They're crazy, they're anti-government, they want to have a civil war and overthrow the government, whatever nonsense they come up with. But that's a big obstacle for people. When you talk to, regular people on the street, go down and talk to people in the mall after this, you'll see, what do you think of preppers? You're going to get, somebody's going to bring up doomsday preppers or the zombie apocalypse, because that's what the images that come up in their head when they talk about that. The other thing that keeps people from preparing at all is this idea that it costs a lot, or it takes, you got to have this huge plot of land somewhere, and you're going to have to put in a bunker, and you got to have 10 years worth of food. That's not what prepping is. Listen, when the winter comes, you get out your ice scraper and your snow brush because you understand the risk of needing to use those things is increased. That's all prepping is. It's just taking, if you have a medical kit at home, you're a prepper. Even if you don't like it, you are. But people see this as this, well, I want this, and this, and they look at this huge goal out here and they don't have the money or the time to do it, so they never get started because it intimidates them. But honestly, it's a simple thing. You go out to the store. I didn't go out and pick up 2 months worth of food when I went to the grocery. My wife would have killed me. I went out and they had I was thinking, geez, we should probably start putting something together. So I bought an extra case of water. It's $2.50 plus the deposit and the tax. That's no big deal. We went out and bought, they had a sale on beans, like pork and beans, green beans, and corn for all 50 cents a can, so I bought like 20 cans of them. I spent $10. That was how I started my prepping for food. I mean, it was better than nothing if something happened. So it really isn't this huge thing. You don't need to have an arsenal. You don't need a private army behind you. You don't need a bunker in your backyard. You don't need some getaway in the middle of nowhere that you're not actually going to be able to reach if things go awry anyway. It's just starting with something. Start to put some, when you go to the store and you see something on sale, that's how we do it, because we don't have a lot of money at our house. We just go out and we find, hey, that's on sale. That's not a bad prepping item, and that's a really good price. So we pick up 10 of them. Don't just pick up one, pick up a bunch. And we pick up items for our food preps because we can't afford to waste stuff. We don't prep in bulk because we would end up wasting that stuff. We prep in regular, day-to-day sizes of things that we use, and we just rotate as we get more of it. It starts out down in the prepping closet downstairs, and then when we get new stuff, we swap that out. Other stuff comes upstairs and we consume that so that you don't have stuff going bad on you. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes a little bit of thought. But the third reason that people don't prepare, I think it is the most dangerous one, and it's the most untrue of any of the things that I already talked about, and that's that there's never going to be a reason that they have to. Nothing's ever going to happen to them. We exist in a society where people believe for some reason, because it's convenient and it feels good, rather than deal with the fact that bad things are going to happen to everybody at some point, they would rather just live their life every day like nothing's ever going to go wrong. Nothing's ever further than a 2-minute drive to the store to get a supply they need. And that's crazy, because I have examples, and forgive me here, I have a list of things in our recent past that have happened, some of them in other parts of the country, but some of them very close to us, and some of them right here in Auburn, that prove the lie that nothing's ever going to happen where people need stuff. Has anybody here, by the way, ever gone to the store? I went to the store the night that Hurricane Sandy was coming, and I walked into Tops. Now, I didn't need anything because I'm a prepper, so we've already got, we had a few weeks worth of food and water and stuff at our house. But I went into Tops, and the Tops water aisle was gone. It's nothing but empty shelves. The bread was gone. We never even got anything for Hurricane Sandy, for goodness sakes, here in Auburn. But people who don't prepare, when something actually is going to happen and they have to face that, you see it every time there's a big storm in the metropolitan areas, lines and lines of people so far out the door. Not every one of those people is getting what they want when they walk in that store, because the store didn't order 10 days worth of extra stuff for the people that didn't do anything 10 days before they knew the storm was coming. They've got the regular supply, and when that's gone, then you're going to have to stand in line at a different store, and a different store, and eventually probably a lot of people go with nothing. And that's, honestly, it's a harsh reality, but it's your own fault. If you don't do anything to get ready until something actually happens, well, it's too late then. So here's some examples. Does anybody remember in 2003, there was a blackout, huge blackout, covered most of the East Coast, almost all of the Northeast. It covered the Midwest, a good portion of that, and up into Canada even. I remember driving home. I worked first shift at the time, and I was driving home, and about halfway home, I'm thinking to myself, something's off. What is wrong? Because my radio was still on, and something's wrong. And then I realized that there's no neon signs in any of the bar windows I was passing, and I thought, well, what is going on here? It's, this is bar prime time on a Thursday afternoon. What is going on? And I got home and found out nobody had power. We didn't have power. Now, for us, that lasted about, I think, 7 or 8 or 9 hours. But that affected, oh my goodness, 10 million people, and some people didn't get power back for 2 days. Now, that's not a big deal in August, because you can go out on your grill and cook something. But what if it didn't happen in August? What if that power outage happened in January? You can't go out and cook. You can't heat your house. I didn't need heat in August. I was just mad I couldn't run the AC. But what if that happened in the winter? Because that wasn't something where it was simply too much of a power draw from people running their AC. They said that started because of a software bug. That can happen anytime. And if that happens in the winter, well, that's a whole different ballgame, especially here in the Northeast. I'm going to give you an example at the end of this of a family that was very good friends of mine. That we know them, they go to our church, they're good friends, and they didn't prep, and they're all turned around on the subject now. We've had long discussions since, but we'll get to that in a minute. Do you remember 2014, West Virginia had a water crisis? There was a spill of a chemical, and I am not going to attempt to say this. It was MCMH. It is a name that I could not in a million years tell you. It's very long, but it got released. It didn't spill, it got released accidentally from a chemical plant upstream of the main water supply for 9 counties. So for some people it was a few days, other people it was up to 2 weeks. They didn't have drinkable water. And these people are doing, one of my pet peeves is that when you see an event like this, whether it's Hurricane Sandy, it's a snowstorm, there's people standing around waiting for somebody to show up to fix their problem for them. These people were standing around complaining on the news, we don't have anything to drink, where's the government? How about you took 5 minutes to think about this ahead of time, that you might have an interruption in your water supply, and you wouldn't have to be suffering like this now, but that's what you saw. For 2 weeks, without potable water, without something to drink, without something to clean with, without something to cook, what are you going to do? And that can happen anywhere. Because again, it wasn't some catastrophic failure. They simply released it at the wrong time, in the wrong place. And it was a chemical that was used, I think, for cattle farming. I can't really remember. Fertilization process, I believe. But how are you going to eat? That's really something you got to think about. Then you move on to Hurricane Sandy and Katrina. I laughed at the people at Katrina, not because of their suffering, but because of the people that were sitting around. They knew 3 weeks ahead of time that this was coming. They knew it was coming. And they stayed exactly where they were. And then they cried and complained about why the government wouldn't come in and solve. Well, the government has no more power over natural disasters than you or I do. And the idea that they're going to magically fix your problem when you're buried under, 60 feet of water is foolish. People who build their house in essentially a bowl below sea level and then get shocked that they got flooded, Here's how I would have prepared for Hurricane Katrina. I would have moved out of New Orleans the second I found out the whole thing was under sea level. That's a terrible idea. But they didn't prepare. And those people, do you remember the images on TV? They're wading through, who knows what's in that water? Snakes, gators, I don't know. They're wading through, looting TVs. For goodness sakes, what are you going to do with a TV? There's no electricity. I'd be looting water at least if you're going to get something useful. And then Hurricane Sandy. Like I said, I went out the night Hurricane Sandy was hitting because I had to get gas. And I went out to get gas. I stopped at Tops to get macaroni and cheese. Holy cats. It was easy to get macaroni and cheese. Nobody wanted that, but there was no bread. There was no water anywhere. You got your odd loaf of, some random, bizarre, obscure bread nobody wanted apparently. But, I mean, these were gutted. I took pictures. I did a video on it, I think, at some point, and it was shy. It was scary. I walked in and I just thought, so I live in Auburn, New York. This is not New York City. And this many people had no idea that they might need bread a couple of days ago. It's not like Hurricane Sandy just snuck up and showed up that day. We knew it was coming, but they did nothing to prepare until the last minute. And Tops didn't have any supply trucks coming in because half their stuff was coming from the area that really did get hit. That, I think, on tens of thousands of people were affected. Without power for weeks in some places. We had a couple of families from our church that worked for NYSEG, or National Grid, and they were up there basically camped out in tents for weeks trying to restore power because they were devastated. And yet you turn on the TV and here's these people that had no idea that something might go wrong, sitting around angry that people showed up with cookies and hot chocolate. Well, be thankful they showed up with anything. Because in the old days, you got to fix that yourself. You're expected to do something proactive to make sure that you and your family are safe. Nobody wants to be in that situation. I don't want to. I don't want to look my wife in the eye and have nothing to offer her, no food, no water, no anything, and know that I could have had something to offer her if I had just taken some time and a little effort and made just even the most minimal of preparations to be ready for that. Snowstorms. We get them here all the time. Anybody who tells you they don't have a reason to prepare that lives here either has a really short memory or is really stupid. And that's the truth. We've had 2 snowstorms this year that dropped 3 feet of snow on this city. 2. And it wasn't like it spread out over a week. They just dumped in a day and a half 3 feet of snow. Everything shut down. If you don't understand that those things happen, when we're talking to people, you got to remind them. Because people just, it's gone. That was last month. Why remember it? But there were people that were suffering through that because they didn't have the most basic preparations in place. If you don't have a way to heat your home, even a little space in your home for a short time, you're crazy in this state, in this area, because power outages happen all the time. They had in Buffalo, do you guys remember the snowstorm? It was, I think, 2014, I want to say. Yeah. Buffalo got like 6 feet of snow over the course of a couple of days. They shut the thruway down. You don't have time when that happens to say, oh, I'm going to go do this or I'm going to do that. You got to plan ahead of time. And that's what you need to, when you're talking to people, and you really do need to talk to people, because it doesn't matter if they think you're crazy. If you care about people, you don't want them to get caught in the lurch and have nothing and suffer. Because at some point, it's going to be an event big enough where the supply line's not coming right back up. And you want to, each one of us has different needs. We have different things that are priorities for us in our preparations. There's different reasons that we prep. And those are things everybody's got to figure out for themselves. But, kind of take time, take stock of what's important, what you're preparing for, and just start with the most basic things if you don't have it started already. We have a son who has type 1 diabetes, and we just found out less than 2 years ago that he had type 1 diabetes, and the first thing we did was start to figure out how can we start to build up a stockpile of stuff that he's going to need, because I can find water. I have a big old water filter, and I have individual water filters in packs. I can go get drinking water. I can do a lot of things. You can hunt to find food. You can grow food. You can, scavenge food. But finding diabetic supplies isn't going to be easy. So we have, kind of immediately geared up with health problems. You got to plan for that, because you can't plan on somebody else always being there to fix that. If you get in a real emergency situation, you want to be able to at least offer a minimal amount of comfort and assistance until, I'm not talking about a world-ending event. Eventually those supply lines are going to come back. But even if it's only a day or two, at the right point in the year, under the right circumstances, that can be devastating. So finally, I just want to share with you a story about our friends from church. I'm not going to give you their name, but they were right before we had the last big snowstorm in March. I think it was a week before, maybe a little bit more than that. There was a big windstorm that came through, and it blew down a tree, and that fell onto the power lines on the street. So their whole street lost power. It took NYSEG about 36 hours to register on their site, on their website, that there was no power on the street, despite people calling up and telling them there's no power, just to get it scheduled for somebody to come up. So they were without power for about 2.5 days. And it was March, it wasn't January, but again, what if it happened in January? But their house still got down to in the 40s. Now, because it was only their street affected, they could go to other people's houses, they could go to the store and buy things. But they have been very receptive to me. They sought me out immediately after this with, hey, what kind of heater would you recommend for your house? And I told them, don't try to heat your whole house. Get a small, you're going crazy if you're going to try, unless you got a generator, to try and heat your whole, figure out how to heat a small enough area to keep you and the people you want to keep alive, if it's really cold. But do something. They asked me about water filters, stuff that didn't even affect them there, because they still had water. But they started asking me about a whole bunch of things, and we started just, I said, here's what I got, you can look at these, here's some good stuff. I don't have all the answers, but I know, I say, no matter what you're doing, whether it's prepping or anything else, something is better than nothing. So no matter what step you take, it's better than taking no steps at all. If you go out and buy an extra pack of Band-Aids, you're better than you were before you bought that pack of Band-Aids. And then once you get your basic, regular first aid kit at your house set, start buying some stuff that isn't in your normal first aid kit. I got a closet full of diabetic supplies. You wouldn't believe it. It's a cupboard. It's just chock full of diabetic supplies now, because that was something that you never know when something's going to happen. And I wanted to get that built up as fast as I could. But we also have things, sutures and other things that, maybe not the normal thing, but you never know when you're going to need them. There's a lot of people around that think prepping just involves getting guns and ammunition. Well, good luck packing a wound with extra mags. It's not going to happen. You need to be prepared for a lot of different things, not just one thing. Because life isn't usually going to give you the thing you're waiting for to happen. It's going to be the thing you're not expecting to happen. So you kind of want to have given that some thought ahead of time. Another thing that I would really recommend for anybody who's looking to begin prepping, or maybe already prepped, is beginning to form relationships with other people. This is a great place to meet people. Everybody here is armed. That's a good start right there. Nobody here is really thinking that you're crazy for bringing it up. You just start talking to people. You'd be surprised. Can I mention Jeremy and your people around?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Becky and Jeremy just talks to people, his neighbors and other people. And in doing that, he's got 2 or 3 people just immediately right near him, within a couple of houses of him, that are kind of preppers and like-minded. And when you do that, in the immediate, the first part of any event that might be a really bad event, you're way better off because you're not alone. You've got 3 people. You don't have to get somewhere. You've got 3 people that families can bunch up, and your protection's going to be better. Start talking to people. You might find out that somebody has a skill that they can teach you that would be really good to know. You might have something you can teach them. They might have some prepping supply, a lot of it, and you have something else, or you could work to get some of that stuff. You'd be shocked at some of the stuff that some of the people I know come up with, and I'm always like I have no idea where they got that, but I'm glad to have, sure, I'll take one. I do that all the time. We'll have things, a little extra or something, and I'll say, hey, could you use this? Because those kind of relationships built ahead of time are going to make it a lot easier in an event where something really does, go awry and things get really ugly. you've got some relationships already put into place. You don't need a militia or some group that's got a compound somewhere ready to go have a shootout. Just have people you know that are around you that can secure a small area and keep you and your family and some other people safe if something really goes ugly. I mean, you don't have to look, without even having notes on this, you don't have to look very far back to look at places where things have gone from normal to completely out of control, and people were in danger who had done absolutely nothing, because this illusion of civility and safety is just that. It's an illusion. And you ask the people in Ferguson how fast things can go from totally normal to everything's up in flames and people are throwing bricks and shooting at people randomly. It's a frightening thing. Ask people in Los Angeles from, what is it, back in 91, 92, after the, in Watts. Those things go from, these are people that were just going about their normal business on a day and suddenly find themselves in the middle of a mob that wants to rip their head off. They didn't even do anything to them. They don't know anything about these people. They just, I'm mad about something and somebody's getting hurt for it. These events really happen, and they don't just happen in New York City or Los Angeles or some giant metropolitan area. Ferguson's not a big area. They can happen anywhere. It just takes, you got a lot of angry people. You got the media whipping people into a frenzy on a regular basis. You got a lot of people carrying around a lot of distrust and anger for no reason, unjustified, but it just takes a spark to set that off. And if you and your family are in the middle of that and you've done nothing, you got nobody else around you, that can get ugly real fast. I live on a street, love my neighbors. I got, a lot of old people around us, good people, but the whole street's not all good people. We got some crazy, angry, mouthy, and this is under when their lives are going normal. And they're just angry and screaming at people for no reason and, wanting to fight. What are they gonna be like the second something happens where their check doesn't show up that month or something like that? Then you've got a whole different problem on your hand because they're burning something to the ground. It ain't gonna be my house. I'll tell you that right now. I don't know, my brother once said to me, how many people do you think you'd have to shoot? I said, I don't know, but I'm gonna guess the first body in the yard would be a pretty damn good sign to everybody else coming along. Maybe this ain't the right house. Oh, the neighbor's house doesn't have a body on the lawn. Maybe I'll just head over there instead. You gotta be able to protect yourself and you gotta be ready to do it. And I'm not saying that event's gonna happen. I'm not saying here in Auburn, New York, we're gonna have, people rioting. But man, you got a lot of entitled, lazy, selfish, angry people in this world, in this country, that get catered to and nurtured to on a regular basis, and it's just going to take the right circumstance, and I don't care where you live. They'll come and find you. If they think you've got something and they want it, they're going to use that, because you see it every time the riots start. They're protesting some social justice event, but they're grabbing TVs and liquor. Congratulations, you solved all the world's justice problems with your liquor and looting and burning stuff to the ground. And then after they do that, and by the way, this is a little side note, they always complain who's going to rebuild the community. Nobody, if they've got half a mind, because if I was an insurance company, I sure wouldn't be like, oh yeah, we'll insure you to rebuild the same building for the third time in 2 years. That seems logical. No, stop burning the building to the ground. You're only hurting yourself. Somebody comes down my street, wants to burn the street, you can burn your own stuff to the ground all you want. They protest all, hey, knock yourself out. But don't touch my neighbor's stuff and don't touch my stuff and don't threaten my kids. That's just how it is. I mean, you got to be prepared for anything these days. I'm going to have to edit that part out, I think. So that's just a little bit on prepping. Does anybody have any questions? Anything you always wondered about kooky preppers or?
Well, you got the drug craze now. It's worse than it's ever been. So now, instead of only having a city with 6 or 8 people that are nuts, you might have 100.
That's true. We have an opioid epidemic, and then if that supply line ever gets cut off, you're going to have a whole lot of people that are unstable for at least a short term while they deal with that. That's absolutely true.
You got any, we have all the basic first aid stuff, but if you got any suggestions about having, going beyond the basics?
You know, I just started with the normal stuff. You go to I just went to the dollar store. I got, you know, this, and here's some gauze, and here's some other stuff. But then it built up to, I had a guy send me a backpack. It was the coolest thing in the world. Just a guy who'd seen the YouTube videos, liked them, and sent me out this backpack of medical supplies, and it had iocane, or is that from the Princess Bride?
It is.
Okay, it's something like iocane, because as soon as he sent it to me, I'm like, is this the stuff from the Princess Bride? Did he send me some colorless, odorless poison? But that's an inside joke for anybody who's seen it. But you know, you just start building up different things. You want enough stuff to pack wounds, because it's really easy. You don't need a gunshot to end up with a gaping wound in a situation where, so, you know, you're going to have to go out and do a lot more stuff for yourself, and there's a lot more chance that you're going to fall, you're going to trip. You know, in a situation, if it's winter, where it's a lot elevated opportunity for you to bust yourself open. You don't need a evildoer to do that for you, and you're going to want a way to stop the bleeding, to pack the wound. I think that the blood clot stuff is really good. Quick clot. If you can get your hands on some quick clot, everybody should have some of that, because you never know when you're going to, you know. I've seen Jim out there, you know, chopping down branches and stuff. It takes just one slip with the saw, and suddenly your hand's hanging off, and you want to get that stopped as quick as you can, or keep the bleeding to a minimum while you get him his medical. I'm not saying you in general, Jim.
Right.
Just, you know, yeah, I think quick clot's a good thing. The sutures I actually got from Jeremy and Becky, and I was like, that's really good. I never even thought about that. I was always just going to use, you know, a needle and thread, and you know that'll work. But the sutures are a lot. They're specifically designed to stitch yourself up if you need to, and it's probably a lot less painful. Yeah.
Just very slightly off topic. So I went to YouTube and I typed in VP Prepping and Survival, and I got some of your things and then all sorts of other things. Is there any way to get it to list just your stuff so I can take a scroll through and see all your things?
Probably the easiest way to do that is to go to my channel itself. The first thing that
How do you do that?
when you type in VP Prepping and Survival, let me just double check so I know what I'm talking about here. It should be when you go to YouTube and type in VP Prepping and Survival, the first thing that should come up on top of that thing should be, I got it right on top here, let's see. Yeah, the first thing that comes up is right here, and it tells you how many subscribers I have here, and that stuff. That's the actual channel. So if you click on that, it's going to bring up just like there's the channel trailer you don't need to watch. And
I did watch it.
oh, that's pretty.
That far.
And there's like, here's a list of videos. You click on that and it'll give you all the recent videos and then the popular uploads. And I've got some playlists put in place, but they're badly put together. You know, I got to put more time into it. But and there's a lot of good resources out there. One of the best things you'll probably get from watching any of my videos is other people's names that know what they're doing. So you can actually go to them and it's like, hey, that person presents it in a professional, intelligent, rational way instead of this crazy guy. So I get a lot of information from YouTube. Is a great resource. You just got to be careful because some people really are nuts, and you don't want to be like, this guy's, man, that sounds great, and then think it through first, because there's some people telling you to do crazy stuff. But most of the time, it's just a really good resource. Of if you type in prepping and survival, you'll get all kinds of different people to come up, and there's a lot better channels than mine to check out, better videos and more informative and better, people with much higher skill level than I have in a lot of things.
We have lots of water, but are there like a homemade water filter that you could set up that doesn't rely on, commercial types of filtration? I mean, we wouldn't run out of water, but I'm not sure. I mean, obviously we could, but.
Yeah, I think having a way to filter water is one of the most important. If people ask me what's the thing you really need to start with, you can build up X amount of water, but eventually you're going to run out of bottled water, no matter how much you store up, and you're going to need some way to take water from a creek or a stream. Most of us have in this area tons of water available to us, but you got to have a way to take that from water to water you can drink. So you can build your own filter. I've seen people that have done that in videos. The process to do it exactly, I don't know. But there's also a lot of different filters depending on how much you're looking for. You can get, right down to Bass Pro, several different kinds. The Life Straw, I want to say it filters out. Does anybody have like 250,000 gallons of water or something. You have to make sure you keep that back flushed, or else the filter gets cooked up and it won't work. But if you keep it back flushed, they'll work for a long time, and they're just small portable stuff you can have in your car or wherever, so that if you're out somewhere and you get stranded, and you see them on those shows like I Shouldn't Be Alive, every one of those people, if they had a life straw on them, would be in much better shape, because they wouldn't get dysentery when they're drinking from streams with who knows what in there. There's some smaller versions that filter out 30 or 50 gallons that are still good for a period, and then we have one in our house that's a stand-up home unit that just will work for, I think it does 18 gallons of water a day, or maybe it's 8 gallons of water a day, but it'll do that indefinitely for, they've had them in use in third world countries where they were designed to work for over 5 years, and they haven't stopped working. So, you can pick up, Berkey has a bunch of good filters. The one I have is not a Berkey, I don't even recall the name of it, but there's a lot of good water filters out there at a lot of different price points depending on what you're looking for. And that's, you can live 30 days without food, but you're not going to go very long without some kind of water to drink. The only thing more imminent than finding water is, you got about 3 days, or 3 days, 3 hours without shelter. If you don't have any shelter, 3 hours, 3 days, 30 days, something like that, shelter. But most of us have a house. I mean, that's where we're going to be when stuff goes wrong. So you got shelter kind of already set up, but you're going to need some way to get water to filter out water. Otherwise, you're going to have water everywhere, and as the saying goes, not a drop to drink.
One other thing with your water, pinch comes to shove, you can boil it.
Yes, but if you have, even that, if you don't have a way to make fire, if you're talking about electricity being out, you don't have any way, you can't use your stove. We all have grills, but say you don't have a grill, and you've used that up. You gotta have some mechanism. Another thing that I think is really important is just simply the ability. It was common knowledge 2 generations ago, but it's not anymore, how to start a fire without a lighter or matches. By the way, stock a bunch of lighters and matches, because it's a lot easier to do it like that.
Takes a while.
But if you don't have that, and you're stuck out in the woods somewhere, you want a way to you want to know how to build a fire, how to start a fire, because that'll at least give you warmth. And you can use it to cook things, you can use it to boil your water, you can do a lot to at least make yourself, it's a lot better than not having a fire. So, and there's a million different things, there's a million tricks to that. Having a little pack of dryer lint, just, you pull lint out of your pocket, honestly, if you're out somewhere and you're really in a pinch and you need some kind of tinder, just reach in your pocket, because lint goes up like that. You get one spark on that and it's going to start, and then you can catch other stuff off of that and get the fire started. And we have just baggies full of dryer lint, and my wife thinks I'm crazy. I'm like, you kidding? That's like 2,000 fires I got there. What are you talking about? I got this started. Anybody else got anything? All right, well, thanks for having me, folks. I appreciate it.
Thank you.